Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her hands shaking as she gripped the edge of the sink. At 24, she looked even younger than her age. Her petite frame had always made people comment about how young she appeared, but now those innocent remarks felt like sharp knives cutting through her heart. The pregnancy test lay on the counter beside her, showing 2 clear pink lines that had changed everything. She was barely 5 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds. Throughout her life, doctors had mentioned her small frame during routine checkups, but she had never thought much about it. Now, with a baby growing inside her, every medical concern seemed magnified. The internet searches she had done late at night painted frightening pictures of complications and risks that made her stomach churn with worry. David was in the kitchen making breakfast when she finally emerged from the bathroom. He looked up with his usual warm smile, the one that had made her fall in love with him 3 years ago. His tall, broad frame filled the doorway as he moved toward her, concern replacing the smile when he saw her pale face and trembling hands. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, setting down the coffee mug and reaching for her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She couldn't find the words at first. How could she explain the terror that had been building inside her for weeks? The fear wasn't just about becoming a mother, though that was overwhelming enough. It was about her body, about whether she was physically capable of safely carrying and delivering a child. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David guided her to the couch, his large hands gentle on her shoulders. The contrast between their sizes had never bothered her before, but now it seemed to represent everything she was afraid of. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. David's face lit up with joy and surprise, but her expression stopped his celebration before it could begin. "That's wonderful news, isn't it?" he said carefully, searching her face for clues about her obvious distress. "We've talked about wanting children someday." "I'm too small," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "David, I'm too small to bear a child. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't do this? What if my body isn't strong enough?" The fears that had been consuming her for days poured out in a rush. She told him about the late-night research, about the articles she had read describing complications in small women, about the statistics that kept her awake at night. She talked about feeling inadequate, about wondering if she was being selfish for even considering bringing a child into the world when her body might not be able to handle it. David listened without interrupting, his face growing more concerned with each word. When she finished, he pulled her close, and she felt so small and fragile against his chest. For the first time since seeing those pink lines, she allowed herself to cry. "We'll figure this out together," he said softly, his voice steady and reassuring. "Whatever happens, we're in this together. You're not alone in this fear." Over the next few days, they researched everything they could about pregnancy and petite women. They read success stories and learned about modern medical advances that helped women of all sizes have healthy pregnancies. But Sarah's anxiety only seemed to grow worse. Every positive article was overshadowed by her own insecurities and fears. Her mother called one evening while David was at work late. Sarah found herself crying on the phone, explaining her fears to the woman who had raised her. Her mother listened patiently before sharing something Sarah had never known. "Honey, I was exactly your size when I had you," her mother said gently. "I weighed 95 pounds and was terrified the entire pregnancy. But you know what? My body knew what to do. Women's bodies are amazing things, much stronger than we give them credit for." This revelation surprised Sarah. Her mother had never mentioned struggling with similar fears, and knowing that she had successfully carried and delivered a healthy baby gave Sarah her first glimmer of hope in days. The next morning, David took time off work to accompany her to her first prenatal appointment. Dr. Martinez was a warm, experienced obstetrician who immediately put Sarah at ease. After a thorough examination and lengthy discussion about Sarah's concerns, the doctor sat down with them both. "Sarah, I understand your fears, and they're completely valid," Dr. Martinez said. "Your size does mean we'll need to monitor you more closely, but it absolutely doesn't mean you can't have a healthy pregnancy and delivery. I've helped hundreds of women your size safely deliver beautiful, healthy babies." The doctor explained that while Sarah's petite frame would require additional monitoring and possibly some modifications to her birth plan, there was no reason she couldn't carry a baby to term. Modern medicine had countless tools and techniques to support women through pregnancy, regardless of their size. The most important thing right now is taking care of yourself, Dr. Martinez continued. Good nutrition, regular exercise appropriate for pregnancy, and managing stress will be crucial. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health during this time. Walking out of the doctor's office, Sarah felt lighter than she had in weeks. David squeezed her hand as they made their way to the car, both of them processing the positive news they had received. "See?" David said, opening the car door for her. "I told you we'd figure this out together. Dr. Martinez seems really confident, and she's delivered hundreds of babies." Sarah nodded, feeling foolish for letting her fears spiral so far out of control. But she also realized that her concerns weren't entirely unfounded. She would need to be more careful, more attentive to her body's needs, and more willing to ask for help when she needed it. That evening, they called both sets of parents to share the news. The joy and excitement in their voices helped Sarah begin to feel genuinely happy about the pregnancy for the first time. Her mother cried with happiness, and David's parents immediately began making plans to visit once the baby arrived. As she lay in bed that night, David's arm around her, Sarah placed her hand on her still flat stomach. The fear hadn't completely disappeared, but it had been joined by something else. Hope. Maybe her body was stronger than she thought. Maybe love and good medical care would be enough to see her through this journey. The baby inside her was still tiny, just a collection of rapidly dividing cells, but already it was changing everything about her life. She was going to be a mother, and despite her size, despite her fears, she was going to do everything in her power to give this child the best possible start in life. The second trimester brought unexpected challenges that tested Sarah's newfound confidence. At 16 weeks, what should have been an exciting milestone became another source of worry. Her belly remained barely noticeable, and well-meaning friends and family members constantly commented on how small she looked for someone 4 months pregnant. "Are you sure you're eating enough?" her sister Emma asked during their weekly lunch date. "You barely look pregnant at all. Maybe you should be gaining more weight." These comments, though meant with love, chipped away at Sarah's confidence. She had been following Dr. Martinez's nutrition plan carefully, but now she wondered if she was somehow failing her unborn child. The scale at her weekly appointments showed steady, healthy weight gain, but compared to other pregnant women she saw in the waiting room, she felt inadequate. David noticed her growing anxiety and suggested they attend a prenatal class together. The community center offered a series specifically for first-time parents, and Sarah reluctantly agreed to go. Walking into the room full of pregnant women at various stages, Sarah immediately felt out of place. Most of the other expectant mothers had prominent baby bumps, while she still looked like she might just be bloated. The instructor, a cheerful nurse named Linda, began by asking everyone to introduce themselves and share how far along they were. When Sarah's turn came, she quietly mentioned being 16 weeks along. Several women looked surprised, clearly expecting her to say she was much earlier in her pregnancy. During the break, a woman named Michelle approached her. Michelle was also petite, though slightly taller than Sarah, and was clearly much further along in her pregnancy. "Don't let the size thing get to you," Michelle said with a knowing smile. "I'm 32 weeks, and people still tell me I look small. My doctor says the baby is perfectly healthy, and that's all that matters. Some of us just carry differently." This conversation was exactly what Sarah needed to hear. Michelle shared stories of her previous pregnancy, explaining how she had worried constantly about her size but had delivered a healthy 7-pound baby without complications. They exchanged phone numbers, and Michelle became Sarah's first real pregnancy friend. As the weeks progressed, Sarah began to relax and enjoy her pregnancy more. The morning sickness that had plagued her first trimester disappeared, and she felt more energetic than she had in months. David suggested they start preparing the nursery, and together they spent weekends painting walls and assembling furniture. The 20-week ultrasound appointment was a turning point for both of them. Seeing their baby clearly for the first time, watching tiny arms and legs move on the screen, made everything feel real in the most wonderful way. The technician measured every part of the baby carefully, and Dr. Martinez reviewed the results with obvious satisfaction. "Everything looks perfect," she announced. "The baby is measuring right on track for your due date, and all the organs appear to be developing normally. You're doing a great job, Sarah." They chose not to find out the baby's gender, wanting to preserve that surprise for the delivery day. But having confirmation that their child was healthy and developing well, gave Sarah a confidence boost she desperately needed. Around this time, she also started feeling the first flutter of movement. The sensation was so subtle at first that she wasn't sure if it was the baby or just digestion, but over the next few weeks, the movements became unmistakable. David was thrilled when he finally felt a strong kick one evening as they watched television together. "There's really a person in there," he said with wonder. His large hand spread across her small bump. The contrast in their sizes no longer seemed frightening to Sarah. Instead, it felt protective and reassuring. Work became more challenging as Sarah's pregnancy progressed. She worked as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm, spending long hours at a computer. Her boss, Janet, was supportive and allowed her to take frequent breaks. But some of her coworkers seemed skeptical about her pregnancy-related needs. "She doesn't even look that pregnant," Sarah overheard one colleague whisper to another. "I worked right up until my due date with no special accommodations." These comments stung, but Sarah was learning to advocate for herself and her baby. She requested an ergonomic chair and a standing desk option, changes that helped with the back pain that had started to develop. Dr. Martinez emphasized that Sarah's smaller frame meant her body would feel the changes more intensely, and that taking care of herself wasn't being dramatic or weak. The baby shower that David's sister organized was both overwhelming and wonderful. Seeing all the tiny clothes, blankets, and equipment made the approaching reality of parenthood feel both exciting and terrifying. Sarah's mother surprised her by bringing out a box of items she had saved from Sarah's own infancy. "I thought you might want to use some of these," her mother said, pulling out delicate baby gowns and soft receiving blankets. "These were yours, and before that, they were mine. My mother saved them through 3 generations." Holding these precious items, Sarah felt connected to a long line of women who had successfully navigated pregnancy and motherhood, despite their own fears and challenges. Her great-grandmother had been even smaller than Sarah, according to family stories. Yet she had raised 4 healthy children in an era with far less medical support. As the second trimester drew to a close, Sarah felt stronger and more confident than she had at any point since discovering her pregnancy. Her belly was finally showing in a way that made her pregnancy obvious to strangers. Though she was still smaller than most women at 24 weeks, Michelle had become a close friend and mentor, sharing practical advice about everything from maternity clothes to dealing with unwanted comments from strangers. They met for coffee weekly, and Michelle's calm confidence helped Sarah prepare mentally for the challenges ahead. "The 3rd trimester is when things get really interesting," Michelle warned with a laugh. "But remember, your body knows what it's doing. Women have been having babies forever, including women our size. Trust yourself." David had been incredibly supportive throughout the pregnancy, attending every appointment and reading pregnancy books with the same dedication he brought to everything in his life. He had already assembled the crib and changing table, and spent evenings talking to Sarah's belly about his plans for teaching their child to ride bikes and play catch. One evening, as they sat together watching the baby move visibly beneath Sarah's skin, she realized how much her perspective had changed. The fear was still there, but it was balanced now by excitement and wonder. Her body was creating life, something that seemed miraculous no matter how common the process might be. "I think I'm actually starting to believe I can do this," she told David, placing his hand where the baby was kicking most actively. "I never doubted it for a second," he replied, kissing her forehead gently. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah, and in a few months we're going to meet our little one." The future still held uncertainties and challenges, but Sarah was beginning to understand that fear and joy could coexist. Her pregnancy journey was uniquely hers, shaped by her size and her circumstances, but valid and beautiful nonetheless. She was growing more than just a baby. She was growing into the mother she was meant to become. The 3rd trimester brought intensity Sarah hadn't anticipated. By 30 weeks, her small frame was stretched to its limits, and simple tasks like putting on shoes or getting out of bed became major undertakings. The baby had grown strong and active, often keeping her awake at night with vigorous kicks and rolls that made her entire belly shift and move. Dr. Martinez increased the frequency of appointments, monitoring both Sarah and the baby closely. The ultrasounds showed a healthy, active baby who was measuring slightly smaller than average, which the doctor explained was completely normal given Sarah's petite build. "Babies tend to match their mother's size, Dr. Martinez explained during a 32-week appointment. "Your little one is probably going to be perfectly proportioned for your body to deliver safely." This news brought Sarah immense relief, but new concerns arose as her due date approached. The nursery was ready, the hospital bag was packed, but Sarah found herself lying awake at night wondering if she would recognize the signs of labor, if she would be brave enough to handle the pain, if her body would know what to do when the time came. Michelle had given birth to her second baby the month before, and her experience gave Sarah both comfort and concern. The labor had been quick and intense, lasting only 6 hours from start to finish. Michelle called Sarah from the hospital, exhausted but elated, to share every detail. It was harder than I remembered, but also more manageable, because I knew what to expect. Michelle said, "Your body will take over, Sarah. Trust me on this. All the worrying we do beforehand doesn't really prepare us anyway." At 36 weeks, Sarah's obstetrician recommended she stop working and focus on resting and preparing for delivery. Her boss was understanding, and Sarah found herself with unexpected time to think and plan. She used the quiet hours to write letters to her unborn child, documenting her hopes and dreams for their future together. David had arranged to take 2 weeks off after the baby's birth, and his excitement was infectious. He talked constantly about teaching their child to walk, to read, to ride bicycles and throw baseballs. His confidence in their future as parents helped calm Sarah's remaining fears about her ability to mother this child. The false alarm started at 37 weeks. Sarah woke up twice to strong, regular contractions that sent them rushing to the hospital, only to have everything stop once they arrived. Each time, the medical staff was kind and reassuring, explaining that false labor was common and actually a good sign that her body was preparing for the real thing. "Think of it as practice," the nurse told her during their second late-night visit. "Your uterus is getting ready for the marathon ahead." At 38 weeks and 3 days, Sarah woke at 3 in the morning to a sensation she had never felt before. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was unmistakably different from the false labor she had experienced. The contractions felt deeper, more purposeful, and they didn't ease up when she changed positions or drank water. She timed them for an hour before waking David. They were coming every 8 minutes and lasting about a minute each. According to everything they had learned in their birthing classes, this was still early labor, and they should wait until the contractions were closer together before heading to the hospital. "This feels different," Sarah told David as he rubbed her back through another contraction. "I think this might be it." They spent the morning walking around their neighborhood, timing contractions and trying to stay calm. By noon, the contractions were coming every 5 minutes, and Sarah was having trouble talking through them. David loaded their hospital bags into the car, and they made the familiar drive to the maternity ward. The triage nurse confirmed what Sarah already knew. She was in active labor and dilated to 4 centimeters. They were admitted to a private room with a view of the garden, and Sarah tried to relax into the process she had been anticipating for months. The next several hours passed in a blur of increasing intensity. The contractions grew stronger and closer together, and Sarah discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. David stayed by her side, offering ice chips and encouragement, helping her breathe through each wave of pain. Dr. Martinez arrived when Sarah was dilated to 7 centimeters, checking her progress and confirming that everything was proceeding normally. "You're doing beautifully," she told Sarah. "Your body knows exactly what to do." The transition phase of labor was the most challenging thing Sarah had ever experienced. The contractions came one after another with barely any rest between them, and she felt overwhelmed by the intensity. David held her hand and reminded her to breathe, and the nurse offered constant encouragement. "I can't do this," Sarah gasped between contractions. "It's too much. I'm too small. I can't." "You're already doing it," Dr. Martinez said firmly but gently. "Your baby is almost here, Sarah. Your body is working perfectly." At 8:47 inches the evening, after 14 hours of labor, Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to push. The sensation was unlike anything she could have imagined, powerful and unstoppable. Dr. Martinez confirmed she was fully dilated and ready to deliver. The pushing phase lasted 45 minutes. Sarah drew on every ounce of strength she possessed, supported by David's unwavering presence and the medical team's expertise. When she felt like she couldn't manage another push, she thought about holding her baby, about the moment when all this work would result in meeting the child she had carried and worried about for 9 months. "I can see the head," Dr. Martinez announced. "One more big push, Sarah." At 9:32 p.m., their daughter entered the world with a strong cry that filled the room with joy. Sarah collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but exhilarated, as the medical team quickly assessed the baby. "She's perfect, doctor," Martinez announced, placing the tiny, slippery baby on Sarah's chest. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, and absolutely beautiful. Sarah looked down at her daughter, overwhelmed by love so intense it took her breath away. The baby was indeed small, but perfectly formed, with tiny fingers that wrapped around Sarah's thumb, and dark eyes that seemed to look directly into her mother's soul. "She's so little," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect." David was crying too, his large hand gently stroking their daughter's downy head. "Look what you did," he said to Sarah, his voice full of awe and pride. "Look what your amazing body did." The first few hours after delivery passed in a haze of wonder and exhaustion. The nurses helped Sarah begin breastfeeding, and she was amazed when her tiny daughter latched on immediately and began nursing with determination. Her body, which she had doubted for so long, seemed to know exactly what to do. Emma Rose, as they named her, slept peacefully in Sarah's arms while David called their families with the good news. The joy in everyone's voices reminded Sarah of all the people who would love and support this little girl throughout her life. Dr. Martinez stopped by before going home for the night, checking on both Sarah and the baby. "I'm proud of you," she told Sarah. "You trusted your body and yourself, and look at the result." Emma is lucky to have such a strong mother. As Sarah lay in the hospital bed that night, her daughter sleeping in the bassinet beside her, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. All the fears about her size, all the worry about whether her body was capable of this miracle, seemed insignificant now compared to the reality of holding her healthy child. She had been too small, just as she had feared. But she had also been exactly the right size to carry and deliver this particular baby. This perfect little girl who was meant to be hers. Her body had known what to do, just as Dr. Martinez had promised, just as women's bodies had known for thousands of years. David stirred in the uncomfortable hospital chair he had insisted on sleeping in, and Sarah reached for his hand. Tomorrow they would take Emma home and begin their life as a family. There would be new challenges and fears ahead. But tonight, Sarah felt nothing but gratitude and overwhelming love. She had whispered that she was too small to bear a child, trembling with fear and doubt. But love had proven stronger than fear, and her body had proven stronger than her doubts. She was a mother now, and size had nothing to do with the magnitude of that transformation.